The Happy Family by Hans Christian Andersen. The biggest green leaf in this country, depend upon it, is a burdock leaf. Hold it in front of your tummy, and it would do for an apron. Put it over your head in the rain, and it's almost as good as an umbrella. It's a tremendous size. A burdock never grows by itself. Where there's one growing, there are lots more. It's a lovely sight, and all that loveliness is food for snails. The big white snails that fine folk in the old days used to have stewed into a fricassee, muttering, "Yum, yum, how delicious," as they ate it, for they really did love the taste of it. These snails lived on burdock leaves, and that's how the burdocks came to be sown. Well, there was an old manor house where they had given up eating snails. These had quite died out, but the burdocks hadn't died out. They grew and grew all over the paths and flower beds, till they were quite out of hand. There was an absolute forest of burdocks. Here and there stood an apple tree or a plum tree, otherwise you'd never have guessed it was a garden. The whole place was covered with burdocks, and in the middle of them lived the last two snails, both extremely old. They didn't themselves know how old they were, but they could well remember that there had once been many more of them, that they belonged to a family coming from foreign parts, and that it was for them and theirs that the whole forest had been planted. They had never been outside it, though they realized that something else existed in the world called the manor, where you got boiled and then turned black and were laid out on a silver dish. But what happened after that nobody knew. They couldn't anyway imagine what it felt like to be boiled and to lie on a silver dish, but it must be delightful and very much the correct thing. Neither the cockchafer nor the toad nor the earthworm, when questioned, could reply. None of them had ever been boiled or laid on a silver dish. The old white snails were the finest folk imaginable. They knew that. The forest existed entirely for them, and the manor existed for them to be boiled and laid on a silver dish. They were now living quite happily all by themselves, and as they had no children, they had adopted a little common snail that they brought up as their own. But the little creature wouldn't grow, being just a common snail. And yet the old folk, especially Mother Snail, fancied she could see he was getting on. And she asked Father Snail, supposing he couldn't see this, to feel the little shell, and he felt it and came to the conclusion that Mother was right. Then one day there was a heavy shower of rain. "Listen to the rub-a-dub-dub on the burdock leaves," said Father Snail. "Yes, and some of the drops are coming through," answered Mother Snail. "Why, they're running right down the stalk. My, what a drenching we shall get. I'm so glad of our good houses, and of our little ones too. I really think more has been done for us than for any others. Anyone can see that we are the cream of creation. We have houses from birth, and the burdock forest was sown for our benefit. I should like to know how far it goes, and what there is outside it." "There's nothing outside it," said Father Snail. "Nowhere can there be a better home than ours, and I have nothing more to wish for." "Oh, but I have," said Mother Snail. "I should like to go to the manor and be boiled and laid on a silver dish. That's what happened to all our ancestors. I'm sure there must be something extra special about it." "The manor house may have fallen into ruins by now," said Father Snail, "or be overgrown with burdocks, so that the people can't get out. Anyhow, there's no need for haste. You're always in such a fearful hurry, and our little one is beginning to take after you. Why, he's actually been crawling up that stalk for 3 days. It makes me dizzy to look at him." "Now then, no scolding," said Mother Snail. "He crawls along so coolly. I'm sure he will be a great joy to us. And after all, what else have we old folk to live for? But have you thought about this? Where we are to find a wife for him? Don't you think that somewhere deep in the burdock forest there might be someone of our sort?" "Well, I've no doubt there are plenty of black snails," said the old father. "Black ones without a house of their own. But that would be such a come-down. They do think such a lot of themselves." "No, but we might commission the ants to see to it. They go trotting to and fro as if they had something to do. Surely they would know of a wife for our little snail." "Yes, of course. We know the most beautiful one you could think of," cried the ants, "though there might be difficulties, as she's a queen." "That wouldn't matter," said the old snail. "But has she a house of her own?" "She has a palace," replied the ants, "the most beautiful ant palace with 700 corridors." "Thank you," said Mother Snail. "Our son's not going into an ant-hill. If that's the best you can do, we'll commission the white gnats instead. They fly all over the place, rain or shine, and they know the burdock forest inside and out." "We've got a wife for him," cried the gnats. 100 yards off, perched on a gooseberry bush, is a little snail with a house of her own. She lives all by herself and is quite old enough to get married. It's only 100 yards away." "All right," said Father Snail, "but let her come to him. He's got a burdock forest, and she's only got a bush." So the gnats went and fetched the little lady snail. It took her a week to arrive, but of course that was the great thing about it. She was clearly one of the right sort. Then came the wedding. 6 glowworms did their best with lighting. Otherwise the whole thing went off quietly, for the 2 old snails didn't care for feasting and jollification. But Mother Snail made a charming speech. Father was too overcome to manage that, and then they handed over the whole of the burdock forest to the young couple, and repeated what they'd always said, that it was the best place in the world, and if they lived honest upright lives and multiplied, they and their children would one day go to the manor house and be boiled black and laid on a silver dish. When the speech was over, the old snails crawled into their houses and never came out again. They went to sleep. The 2 young ones took charge of the forest and raised a large offspring. But they were never boiled or laid on a silver dish, so they came to the conclusion that the manor must have fallen into ruins and that everybody in the world had died out. And as no one contradicted them, it must have been true. The rain beat down for them on the burdock leaves, rub-a-dub-dub, and the sun shone for them to give colour to the burdock forest, and they were very happy. The whole family were happy. Yes, they really were.